Thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome to episode number 6 in this series where we are modding the Squier Sonic Series Bronco bass to make it as good as we can get it. In this episode, we're going to be comparing two different kinds of bridges. One with threaded vintage style saddles and the other with brass saddles. Which one sounds better? Let's find out together. Let's go. To keep this comparison as fair as I could keep it, I've chosen bridges that are both made by Wilkinson. They're both available on Amazon. They're both bent steel plate bridges. They are both approximately the same weight. The only difference is going to be in the shape and the style of the saddle. So this one is the threaded vintage style. And after this, we are going to reinstall everything and put on the bridge with the brass saddles. Now we're going to have 3 different playthroughs. The first one is with the stock bridge, so the one that came with the Sonic Series Bronco. Then we'll put on the threaded saddles, and then we'll put on the brass. Then we'll come back and talk about it. Here we go. Please let me know what you thought of the tones by leaving a comment below. Now, in an effort to keep things as fair as possible, I have set the string height and the action to the same measurements for each playing example. The pickup height remained constant, the strings remained constant, and I reset up and re-intonated the bass each single time. Let's first talk about the stock bridge. All the parts work, the bass was able to be intonated properly, and the string height adjustment screws work just fine. There's absolutely nothing mechanically wrong with this bridge. And provided you don't abuse and strip the screws, it should function and serve you perfectly fine as is. But if you listen to the tone, there's something kind of harsh in the upper mids and it's slightly on the nasal side. In the second playing example, we put on the bridge with the threaded saddles. Now, to my ears, the bass sounded a little fuller compared to the stock bridge, but more importantly, the mid-range sounded clearer. It was almost like someone lifted off a light veil over the stock bridge, and the bass just spoke with a lot more clarity. But not clarity in the sense that there's a lot of high-end, upper-end clank. It still sounded pretty nice on the higher frequencies, but the mid-range really opened up. In the last third of the playing example, where the pace kind of picks up a little bit, what I like about this bridge, it almost sounds like the bass is playing more evenly than the stock bridge. So it almost sounds like you have just a little bit of compression to it. Now, I've tried very hard to keep the playing as consistent as I could, but so far, I personally like the sound of the threaded saddle bridge over the stock bridge. Now, with the brass saddle bridge, you kind of get mixed reviews about what other people on the online forums have written about brass saddles. Some people call it a warmer sound. Some people think it gives you more high-end bite. There isn't really a lot of consensus there, and a lot of people also find that it really doesn't make a difference. Now, brass is supposed to be a pretty musical metal. My favorite snare drum metal is brass, and having played a bell brass snare before, that thing just rings like a cannon. In contrast to the playing example with the threaded saddles, I found the brass saddles to have a slightly tamer, more mellow top end. Towards the latter part of the playing example, I found the brass saddles to be a little more dynamic. So the softs were a little softer and the loud parts were a little bit louder. So the type of mild compressor type effect that I described with the threaded saddles is the opposite with these. So which bridge sounds better between these two and in comparison to the stock bridge? I think both of the aftermarket Wilkinson bridges sounded bigger and more pleasant sounding compared to the stock bridge. So either of these options for 25 Canadian dollars from Amazon will give you a very small, subtle, but noticeable sonic improvement over the stock bridge. As to which one of these replacement bridges sounds better, I think that is going to be quite subjective, and it's going to depend on the type of music you play, the type of tone you're looking for, and also it comes down to looks. Do you like the look of the brass saddles? Or do you prefer the more kind of vintage looking threaded saddles? I think that's going to be completely up to the player. Please let me know what you thought of the different tones by leaving a comment below. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time for episode 7, where we're going to put on a Fender branded high mass bridge onto this bass. Stay tuned.